And so,
That's good.
have you got the questions in front of you?
Yes.
So do you want to start explaining some of these economic terms then? So we've got like
Yes.
GDP, GDP per capita, things like unemployment, central banks, stock markets. So the three main sectors of the economy. So you've got agriculture, manufacturing, services. So do you want to just quickly just introduce one and then just go off about it?
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with GDP. GDP stands for gross domestic products. Gross domestic product indicates the total amount of money represented in goods and services that a country produces throughout the year without any export goods that come in or imports. So it's just what the country produces throughout the year. Um, and it shows the amount of money that the country has. So in a way, it's the wealth of the country for that certain year. GDP per capita shows how much of that total amount of money is per each population. So let's say UK GDP, so UK in a year produces goods and services worth about 1.3 trillion, and the UK has about 70 million people. So to find GDP per capita, you divide the total amount of GDP per total amount of population. So 103 billion, trillion, no, it's 1.3
Yeah,
trillion to
that'd be crazy numbers,
70
wouldn't it?
million
103
to
trillion.
70 million.
Jesus.
No,
Okay.
the total GDP of the world is 78 trillion. So no, 1.3
Yeah,
trillion
that'd be pretty
to
crazy. It's
70.
just the UK's got more high GDP than the whole world combined. That'd be insane. All right. That was good. So you got unemployment, which is pretty simple.
Yeah, unemployment is just showing how many people, percentage of people do not have work.
And
However, we
oh,
need to make sure when we say that um, unemployment is percentage of people from labor force that do not have job but are looking for a job in the period of 2 to 4 weeks.
and
So
oh
yeah,
yeah,
if you don't look for job in more than this period, then actively looking that you're not part of labor force.
and
So
obviously there are problems with the way unemployment is measured. So I know America has a few different metrics, and obviously in the UK I think it's similar. Where if you're not actively looking for a job but you're not working, then you're not technically classed as being unemployed. And
yes,
in
yes,
America, they have weird metrics. They're like they don't count. They count students as being unemployed as well, and it's a bit of a bizarre system they have there. So that's why you have like I think it's called the U6 unemployment, and then you have the normal unemployment numbers. And obviously in the UK, if you constantly kick people out of the universal credit, then technically that means they're not unemployed, and that makes the figures look better. Um, about
yeah.
accurate there. Okay, so you want to talk about central banks?
So central bank is the main governmental body that is responsible for interest rates, for exchange rates. It does not deal with taxes or with amount of money that we put on imports, but it deals with the monetary policies. So about money supply, how much money are printed, how much money is in the economy. It looks at the, as I said, interest rate, exchange rate, and as an example, of course, England, Fed in America, um and in Europe is the European Central Bank.
Are
They're
they
responsible.
are they important? Like, do central banks play a key
Yes.
role in the economy? So, what kind of stuff? I know they control interest rates, but that's about as far as my knowledge goes. I know they have to try to deal with inflation, and then you've got things like quantitative easing. That's another thing that central banks typically deal with. Do you want to explain kind of their role then?
Yes. So another thing, as you said, quantitative easing is when it's mostly done by the government as well. So when there is a debt, or on the other side, when the country has too much money, they either can sell or take bonds from the private sector or country itself. So if they are selling bonds, then they're looking for investment within their budget. However, if they are buying, then the government has more money and is ready to invest.
I tell you what, people think politics is confusing. Economics is just way worse. Like I don't care what anyone says. Like economics is way more confusing. Um, and so yeah, obviously, things like interest rates aren't controlled by central government. Is there any specific reason why you wouldn't just give that to the exchequer? Why you would have to create a separate branch for that?
To be honest, to control money, it's a bit more difficult because
Specialized.
it's fluctuating.
It's a bit more specialized dealing with things like that. And how much power do central banks have? So if we talk about the Bank of England, how much power do they have over there?
You see, because they are a separate body uh, from exchequer, for example,
Yeah,
they are able to borrow money to government, and they can lend money to government as well.
and that happened recently, right? You said the
Yeah,
uh, the the UK government took out. Was it how much was the overdraft?
the overdraft 55 billion. I think the debt overall was
Was
for
that to
May.
the central bank?
That's total debt of the government with some debt
What?
from Bank of England. I don't really know the
Okay.
percentage exactly.
What if we say to the Bank of England, we're not paying you back? Sorry, man. We ain't got the money. What happens then?
The country will kind of
What?
default on its own debt,
Yeah.
and as a result, we will need help from IMF, World Bank.
Oh no,
That
that's not good.
can lead to higher tax for us
And our credit rating would
taxpayers.
go down as well, wouldn't it? The international credit rating, like the AAA thing, right?
Yes. So
So
yes, I said quantitative easing is something that is it's what they do. So buying securities or these bonds to add new money to the economy.
so quantitative easing is just putting more money into the economy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so obviously you've got the problem with that is it can cause inflation. That's why governments typically don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
or central banks in this case
That's right.
typically don't do it because obviously the inflation problem is real, and obviously um, maybe next time I think it would be worth talking about modern monetary theory because everyone's talking about it, but it takes time to actually understand it. Like I've watched I think I must have watched like 3 hours of content of it, and I'm still confused. And so asking you to explain that in like the space of like 10 minutes would just be really unfair. And so is that something you want to do next time? Modern monetary theory.
Yeah, it can be.
Okay, okay, that's fine. So we've got that. So the stock market. So do you want to just talk about the stock market quickly?
Stock market is about the shares. You know, we have big companies, Apple,
Google.
Amazon,
Yeah.
John Lewis, that have shares. So stock market is controlling all the prices, or not all the prices, but is conducting the exchange between buying and selling stocks.
So who?
They are responsible to look at how the stock price overall, like the average stock market of stock price of the share, the price of a share is fluctuating throughout the time.
Who
Um,
sets the prices of a share of shares? Is it the company itself, or is it how does that work?
yeah, usually companies, they are the ones to set the price. However, again, it depends. With this time of coronavirus, when people don't really spend much money, a lot of shares in price go down.
Because it's about
So
confidence, right? It's about like if you have
it's
confidence
about
in a company, yeah.
confidence.
So yeah, that's why the stock market like is very hard to understand because it's not it like confidence isn't a thing like it's not logic based. Like say for example Tesla recently, their stock prices were going up and Elon Musk said the stock price was way too high and it just tanked. And so it's based around confidence of the company, right? Where you think it's going to go,
Yes,
and so
of
that's
the company, and also look at what competitors do
yeah.
and
And
what your sharers are expecting.
obviously the long term implications are like something like Zoom is going to be around for a long time as long as another competitor doesn't pop up. And obviously it's really necessary now, and it will be necessary for a few more years. At least, obviously now more people know they can work from home, and so more people may actually take that option. Okay, so I think that covers the stock market. It's just not the FTSE 100 is the top 100 companies in the UK, right?
Yeah,
and obviously you got like different like you've got like the Nasdaq and all the other ones as
There's so
well.
many. There are two main ones in America. There are a few in Europe. There are a
Yeah,
few in
it's
UK.
the Dow
So
Jones
it's
and the Nasdaq, right, in America.
yeah as well.
Okay. And so yeah, the stock market is just it's very it doesn't really give you a massive indication of how good the economy is doing or how good ordinary people are doing. Um, Purely because most ordinary people, I think, aside from um, pensions,
How to
are
say?
most people don't have money in the stock market, right?
It's important to that stock market is doing well because let's say the price of share goes down, it means that the overall value of a company is going down. If the overall value is going down, then the company would not be able to sustain itself and would not be able to exist, pay pay for production, pay for their workers. So stock market is important. We
And
created this cycle.
yeah, and so obviously there are problems with like companies paying their shareholders dividends and obviously funding work money that could go to workers and other places to other people or reinvesting it within the company. They pay out dividends to people who uh, effectively haven't really worked for the company. I think that's a separate thing, like an ethical thing, I guess. And that's why some people do like work out in co-ops and things like that, so you don't have that sort of issue. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think stock market is not. I think that'll do it. So you want to talk about the three main sectors of the economy? So you've got agriculture, manufacturing, and services.
Yeah, so agriculture, yeah, that's the main three things that can be linked to
Mm.
GDP. What the country is producing throughout the year: agriculture, manufacturing, and services, goods and services.
All right, and
We know
so
that
oh,
agricultural countries, it's called also as a primary industry, so it's not very, let's say, it's a lot of not protectionism, but how do you call it? Patent?
patent,
Not
patent.
patent. Like countries that produce just they can produce.
It's like subsistence farming. Is that the
No,
thing?
no, that's a
No.
different one. Um,
Uh,
when they have just they have the rights to do that.
like exclusivity, something like that.
No, no, no. I think it's like patent. Yeah, like patent. So just some countries are able to produce some of the goods that grow just in their country, and they
Oh, is it
can export
like
them.
champagne? It's like a intellectual. It's not. Is it? I don't think it's called intellectual property.
Intellectual property. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
champagne you can only grow that in. You can only make that in France, right? And obviously,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think Cornish pasty. I think it's something like can only be made in a certain place or something like that. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. And so yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So obviously, agriculture is the lowest valued out of the three, even though obviously it's the one I guess humans need the most to live, obviously. And obviously, agriculture is valued the least, correct? And
At the moment, yeah.
at the same time, like I know, even if the UK brought back fishing rights, it wouldn't be worth a lot to the bigger economy purely because in terms of like fish, it's not worth a lot the industry. Um,
But you see, it's it's good for big countries to produce
mm,
agriculture because they get subsistences or they get like benefits, help from the government, and
yeah,
they are able to produce more at a cheaper price and export.
and obviously they have better technology, and that really helps massively as well. And you in
Yeah,
theory have more expertise. Obviously, in your native country you would do, but when you go to foreign countries, that's where you have issues. And that's something we've seen historically, right? With some countries going back to how they used to farm purely because it's how it works. Like I think Native American people they sometimes burnt the land and then planted crops afterwards because that was the best way to grow things. But when the settlers went over, they were like, "What the hell are you savages doing?" And so agriculture like it's very complex. Like it's
it's complex,
yeah,
but
it's beyond
I
just
was
putting seeds in the
linking
ground.
I was linking it to nowadays. For example, when there is a trade or let's say new a country that is again in debt or something like that, and the IMF, World Bank come to help, they are saying that that country cannot give like help,
Yeah,
financial help to their farms, to their farmers.
yeah.
That country most likely is an agricultural country, the main export.
I know.
So without
Oh,
any help from the government, the agricultural part industry or agricultural part will decrease, and in this way, either the exports will be higher in price or they will be just lower. The people will not be able to produce massively.
We know that that's a big problem with the US and China currently. As one of the issues is that what's it called when they pay you? It's like state aid, but there's like a word for it. Subsidize when they subsidize farming, and obviously, I think one lady she was a professor at, I think university, one of the London university, one of the big ones, and she said
Yeah,
something on the lines of this was like a interview from last year where she said the US had violated multiple WTO sort of rules with subsidizing things like farming because the US farms are heavily subsidized.
hmm
And so she was saying that how can the US complain about China subsidizing companies when the US also subsidizes companies? It don't make sense. And subsidizes farms. I think specifically that was the issue. And so agriculture, like in terms of like farming, it's very expensive, and it does require help from the state, by the looks of things. So obviously manufacturing is just the production of goods, right? So
yes.
physical goods like phones, cars, that sort of stuff.